Hello and welcome back to the End Game, Insiders on Your Side, a podcast that's been developed for senior lab executives by senior lab executives. My name is Melissa Butterworth, and I am your proud host of the End Game podcast. Today, we have a really special guest, someone I am so excited to introduce you all to. I've got with us Adam Earl. He is the prior lab owner of LabWorks, and today he's going to be sharing with us really important topic, and that is lessons learned when you're going through the M&A process and kind of the do's and the don'ts from his experience. And Adam, I'm just so happy to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you, Melissa. It's a privilege to be here with you today. Thank you for having me.
No, absolutely. I'm just so appreciative. I so enjoyed working with you over the last, I went back and looked. It's really been about 3.5 years that we've gotten to know each other. You're just such a stand-up guy. You're an amazing person. Before we get started, I love to share kind of a fun fact about our guest. And one of the things that I really admire most about Adam is that he really has his priorities in order. His family means the world to him. They're his number one priority. He actually has a wonderful wife, and he has got 4 children that range from the ages of 4 all the way to 16. And one of the things that Adam did that I don't know how he survived it, but he actually packed everybody's bags. And last year, during the middle of the transaction, when he was in the middle of selling his lab, he ran off to Europe. He took the entire family, including his 4-year-old, to Italy. Oh my God, I can't even imagine that. How was that experience, Adam? Was that fun?
It covered every emotion. We made some amazing memories. I was able to handle a couple of the diligence calls while I was there, so we easily coordinated that. But it was an amazing time. I know you love Europe, and I know you love to travel. So it was nice that I was able to set things aside and put the family first. And when we came back, the deal was still moving forward. So we had the memories and the deal still going. So it was a win-win. So very, very great trip, and we look forward to doing a lot more.
I love it. I just love that. And I love the fact that you were in the middle of due diligence and you were able to kind of coordinate all of that, and that you took a 4-year-old on a trip across the country and your children. So I think that's wonderful. And just, again, so appreciate you being here today. And I'd love you to start off by telling the viewers a little bit about your background, how long you've been in the lab industry, and just your experience of being a lab owner in general.
Thank you, Melissa. So I've been in the lab business for about 10 or 11 years now. It kind of landed in my lap in early 2015. I was going through a transition with jobs and met a lab owner out of Birmingham, Alabama, and applied for and accepted a sales position, not knowing anything about labs, diagnostics. Had a little bit of healthcare in my background, but nothing lab specific. And so out of the gates, it was a big struggle for me. It was a big learning curve. But after about 6 months, I was able to get my feet wet. I was able to understand what was needed to be successful in sales in the lab industry. I worked that position for about 5 years and was very, very successful and made a ton of great relationships. And through that opportunity, prior owners of that same laboratory transitioned and started a new lab, and they offered me, which was at the time a very risky opportunity, to join them as a partner in this new venture. And through prayer and thought and discussion with my wife, we decided to take that risk, and extremely grateful and glad that I did. This was early 2020. I joined a lab that was doing a little bit of toxicology testing, but really wanted to break into further molecular testing, chemistry, microbiology, all general lab testing. So when I joined them, that was a month before the pandemic hit.
Wow.
And so it was quite an undertaking over the next 2 months to get this molecular lab set up, running, efficient, organized, all in the middle of a pandemic. But we were able to do it. We were able to capture a huge market share of not only COVID testing, but molecular testing in Alabama. And what I really put out there to not only the leadership team, but to our sales reps was, do not lose sight of the general molecular testing during this pandemic, because I knew that there would be the tunnel was not going to last forever with COVID. It was not a never ending runway, I should say. And so we focused on relationships in general with our providers and our clients and our customers, so that when the COVID testing started taking a pretty deep dive as far as volume, we were able to continue sustaining because we had built up such a broad base of business with toxicology and molecular testing and send out reference testing. Once that send out reference testing reached such a high level of volume, we were able to, with the help of Gary Huff, start bringing testing inside for general chemistry, microbiology, and hematology. And that's really probably what made us the most marketable, was
Yeah.
being a full service lab and not just a specialty lab that was focused on just toxicology or molecular or COVID. And I'll explain that later when I talk about the investment banker, the group that we used prior to you guys, and how the marketing of our lab really set us on a path of not being able to fulfill a transaction. So there's a quick glimpse into the history of my experience in the lab industry and the dynamics of that.
That's incredible, Adam. I mean, when I look at like your background and I looked at how the timing that you came into the industry, and then I look at like the fact that you all like were just really getting the business going and going in the right direction, and then boom, the pandemic hit. What I love about your story is that you all really managed to successfully build really valuable customer base that stuck with you all, that when the pandemic was over you were still able to maintain a certain level of revenue, and you were able to successfully withstand what a lot of labs couldn't successfully withstand. So you all did a really, really great job with that. And what a background. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of folks out there can learn from you all's success. And you mentioned business banker. This I want to kind of put you on the spot, being that that our firm ended up being the brokerage firm through Advanced Strategic Partners that took LabWorks to the market. I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm going to learn myself because I'm not really quite sure how many different folks you all talked to, but I know that you all did go with a investment banker before you came to Advanced Strategic Partners. And I want you to talk a little bit about that and your experience in going in that direction. And let our viewers know, from where you sit, how that worked for you all, and maybe just give us your general opinion.
Absolutely. So one of my partners and I met you in early, I believe it was 2021,
Yeah.
and started talking about LabWorks and the market. And you gave us just a very, very high level outlook on where were we marketable, what we should do. And at the time, yeah, the advice that I remember that you gave us was you need to gain more history. You need to have more experience. You need to have more history as far as volume and revenue, and wait it out. And let's regroup again in a year. One of my partners had a personal and professional relationship with a local group in Birmingham, an investment banking group. And we were anxious, just for multiple reasons, to test the waters. And so we signed an agreement with this investment banking group to take us to market sooner than you had advised. And the group was great. They had sold a lab before. They sell a variety of different companies. And from the outside looking in and on paper, everything felt like it was moving in a positive direction. They had a lot of resources, a lot of relationships. And so when we went to market, we were quickly turned down by all the strategic laboratories, Quest, Sonic, LabCorp. None of those had any fruition to them. And we were approached by a few private equity groups with some deals that were less than what we would have liked, but we chose one and started going down the path after signing an LOI with a private equity. What I learned from that point until that kind of ended was that the marketing of LabWorks was based solely on COVID, which completely scared and ran off the strategic labs. They had no interest in dealing with the sustainability of COVID testing. It was just too unpredictable. And then what I learned on the flip side with the private equity is that they had, well, while these private equity groups usually get together a group of people that have overall healthcare experience, there is few that have specific lab experience. And so they didn't understand our industry. They didn't understand our organization. And I didn't think they really had a solid plan of what to do post close, of how to organize, restructure, and grow LabWorks. And so after about 6 months of going through that process, we backed out of it. And as an ownership group, we decided let's get refocused, reorganized, and figure things out again next year. And so one of my partners and I decided to come down to Florida and see you, and that was in July of 2022.
I
Uh,
can't believe that. Oh my God. I
I
can't believe
know,
it.
I
Wow.
know, almost 3 years ago. But we spent the day with you, meeting and talking, and really kind of coming up with what was a long term plan for LabWorks. And you gave us the same advice then that you had given us before. Let's continue growing. Let's continue organizing. And you made a fantastic introduction to Gary Huff, who we brought in as a strategic advisor, who helped us in the areas of bringing in reference testing, compliance, high level billing audits, and oversight, and really helped us establish our formal board of directors and what really was the stepping stone to allowing you to then really faithfully and rightfully market us as a full service lab that was going to be appealing to a large strategic buyer. The first process that we went through with one of the large strategics, we didn't know it at the time when that one didn't happen, what the real reason for why it didn't work out. We do understand that now, that it was a payer contract issue that they were concerned about. But in January of 2024, we went to market again, and we were able to successfully gain an LOI in March. And we went through about 6 months of due diligence with one of the largest strategic labs, not only in the US, but the world. And we were able to secure a great close in November of this past year. And here I am now talking on the other side of it with you as, an experienced lab owner that's been through multiple different transaction types. And I've learned so much from this. And I think that that's setting the stage for what's next for me, is being able to strategically help other labs with high level processes and advising on testing, compliance, billing, helping these smaller labs get organized to then make them marketable from a group just like yours, and to come back with a successful close. So
Yeah, that's an incredible story. You're bringing back like all of these memories, and it kind of refreshes. Like, I can't believe it was July of 2022, and think about how much was involved from the time that we met that day to where we ended up. Fast forward I think 3 years and like 4 months later, right? I mean, there was a lot of work involved in that. And you mentioned Gary Huff and Take Charge. The industry has changed significantly, especially from an M&A perspective. Buyers right now are really choosy, right? I mean, we've marketed labs before that had 30-40% profitability, and those were like the most beautiful girls at the dance, right? Well, now it's not the case anymore. They've prioritize what they're looking for. They're going after a lot more health system deals. They're going after, really clean clinical molecular deals that kind of fit the mold of maybe, like what we learned kind of somewhat in the process with you. You all at LabWorks were doing a lot of different panels, right? That were pretty significant, to be able to help patient care. And you had a lot of really great, services that you offered, and didn't necessarily fit what the buyers were offering to the market. So I think that was, we had so many different nuances that were going on while we were taking you all to the market. But I think the key in my mind was the preparation. It's what Gary Huff and Take Charge did, coming in, working with you all, helping you button up all, any and all loose ends. And I think another key to that transaction was also working with the buyers and working with them on additional validation studies when it came to the different panels that you offered compared to potentially what they offered. And so there was just a lot involved in that whole transaction. It's not just a clear cut, I'm going to take your lab to the market and get you sold. And I think that, a lot of lab owners might think that a business banker would understand all of those nuances, but it's just not the case, right? I mean, it would be like if you have a heart issue, you're going to go to a cardiologist, you're not going to go to a general practitioner. That's kind of like how I equate it to. But you brought some very valuable lessons up. Of all the lessons, I think, what was the biggest lesson of all of it for you?
I think the biggest lesson was developing patience and an understanding from what the industry is looking for in small clinical laboratories, and having an open mind to Gary's and your advice on the direction that LabWorks needed to take. You get that, and then you have to marry it with how large strategic labs operate, and how do you pull together a small independent clinical lab that has a lot of different ways of doing things, the ways of testing, providing customer service and support and results and interfaces and everything. How do you tie that in to make it appealing and attractive to a large clinical lab? You have to pivot. You have to adjust. You have to be open to change. You have to be open to advice that's given to you. It may go against the grain or the thoughts that you maybe had or envisioned for your lab. But if your ultimate goal is to sell your lab and to have a successful closing, you have to have an open mind and a ton of patience to get everything organized, to be able to make sure that you're able to do your job, and that's to effectively market a small clinical lab that may have, I'll remind you that 80% of our volume was molecular, and that wasn't that attractive to large strategic labs. But what we were able to do with the large strategic lab was elaborate on the other areas that we do, but also get them start thinking about molecular testing. And they ended up keeping our molecular lab open, and now it's on their forefront for the Southeast region to start growing that testing, because they see it as it's a revenue driver for them, but it's about patient care first and foremost. And there's some cutting edge stuff coming out with molecular testing that's really great. We got to get the payers to come along and play ball. That's hard. But from a patient care standpoint, it's going to be there in some form or fashion. So, but the biggest lesson, Melissa, was patience. That there's no time frame that these deals get done. It's all a mixture of hard work and God's timing. It really
Yeah.
is.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think you summarized that beautifully. I'm curious from your perspective, how important was having inside connections with the buyers in this particular transaction? Like, did you think that was a really critical aspect of getting your lab sold, from the perspective of, the team that you hired, whether it was our firm and with Gary Huff, and, was that an important equation in getting this across the finish line and having those inside connections within the buying entities?
Absolutely. It would have been the deal breaker had we not had you and Gary involved. Because what I have found is that confidence and relationships drive a lot of these deals. And yours and Gary's experience in this industry is what drives those buyers' confidence in anything that you are marketing. And you've been doing this for years and years. And so you've developed fantastic relationships. People trust you. You are a woman of your word. And so I think that is what got us over the finish line, was the relationships that you guys have had, but the confidence that buyers have in you, that if you and Gary are saying, this is a good lab, it's compliant, it's a by the book lab, their numbers are right, their customer service, their team are good people, the buyers believe you. They're going to want to see all that, but it gets them to the table, and then we can show them exactly what you're telling them.
Well, no, I appreciate that. But the reality of it is, too, I mean, this transaction would have never happened without you and all the heavy lifting that you did and all of the organization. And, when I think about that, I think, wow, what's next for you, Adam? I know that you're busy still in transitioning of your prior company. I know you're working actively to make sure that that is a success. But I can see, like, from where I sit, I can see you taking what you've learned from this and being able to help people in the market, right? Being able to help other lab owners because you really have walked the walk now. You've been a lab owner, you've gone through this transaction, you know what it takes to get through the transaction successfully. And you've done it with like a very unique, lab operation, being that you had the toxicology, but then you also had all these molecular panels. So I can see you taking all of that and really getting out there and help educating other people that or potentially like we're in your shoes, right? Or in your shoes because you've walked that walk. I mean, is that kind of what you envision too down the road?
Absolutely. I have learned just as much or more from our failed attempts as I have from the successful one. And it only takes one time to be successful. It only takes one. So I think through all of that, you're right. I have gained a unique skill set in being able to share my experience with other business owners in the lab space on the do's and don'ts, and being able just to provide some valuable insight, advice, and consulting as they go through this process, because it is stressful, it is hard, it is long, but it is worth it. And being able to help people in the future and give back, because you and Gary helped me tremendously, and to be able to provide that in the future and to continue learning from you and Gary through these experiences, I'm very grateful. And so I think it's going to launch me into kind of a new career of strategic consulting and advising and project management that I think that I'll find a lot of purpose in. Number one, still going to be family, but I'll enjoy doing this.
I love it. I don't know if you know this about me or not, but I actually was an equity owner of a company early in my career, went through the whole process of selling that organization. We were a publicly traded company, and we sold that organization. And I went through the whole M&A transition and stayed with the company that we sold to for a period of years. But what was really in my heart was to go out and start Advanced Strategic Partners so that I could help lab owners go through what I had just been through myself. So I love that you're doing that. I think it's a natural progression for you. I think that the sky's the limit for you. And you're just a wonderful human being. And it's been such a pleasure to work with you over the last 3+ years. So appreciate you coming on today. If our viewers want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you, Adam?
Absolutely. So my email address is adablabconsulting.com. They can always reach out to you. I know that you can find me. And they can call me anytime at 470-214-0979. Email is probably the easiest, and I'll be happy to get back with you. And just know that I'm here to help any way that I can, and advise. And if necessary, help you get through the process of a successful transaction. So
Wonderful. Well, I
thank,
cannot
thank,
thank you enough. I just love
thank
what you've done. I love your purpose with your family. I love the fact that you've successfully gotten through this transaction. I was so happy about that, and we still have to celebrate in the near future. We put all of our podcasts on Apple, Spotify, and now YouTube as well. In addition, you can go to www.advancedstrategicpartnerswithan.com because we post all of our podcasts on our website as well. So tuning out. I will be back in 2 weeks. Thank you for joining us today with the end game. And thank you, Adam, so much for joining us.
Thanks, Melissa. Have a blessed day. Talk to you soon.
Here.